collapse when you leave. They collapse when they realize who they betrayed, because betraying a super empath isn't just a mistake. It's a psychological injury they never recover from. They may look fine. They may even move on fast. But internally, something vital breaks and it never resets. If this resonates, if you felt this shift after walking away, pause for a moment, ground yourself, and stay with this message, because understanding this is how you stop internalizing their damage. A super empath doesn't just love deeply, they mirror humanity back to the narcissist. And that is exactly why the bond is so destabilizing. A super empath has an unusual capacity to feel with someone, not just for them. They intuit emotions before words are spoken. They notice shifts in energy, and they respond to pain that hasn't been articulated yet. Around a narcissist, this creates a dangerous illusion. The narcissist feels seen without having to be vulnerable, understood without having to explain, soothed without having to take responsibility. For the first time, their internal chaos feels organized. Their shame quiets. Their emptiness feels filled. Not because they healed, but because someone else was unconsciously doing that work for them. The super empath mirrors back what the narcissist cannot access on their own: warmth, depth, emotional continuity, and a sense of being real. This is why the narcissist often says things like, "No one understands me like you do," or "I've never felt this safe." What they're responding to isn't love in the healthy sense, but regulation. The empath becomes an emotional anchor, reflecting back a version of the narcissist that feels tolerable to live inside. Over time, the narcissist becomes dependent on that reflection, even while resenting it, because being mirrored also means being seen, and being seen threatens the narcissist's carefully constructed false self. When betrayal happens, it's not just an act of disloyalty, it's a rejection of the mirror. The narcissist believes they are discarding the empath, but psychologically, they are shattering the one surface that made them feel whole. Once the super empath withdraws, the narcissist is forced to face their unfiltered inner state again. The noise returns, the shame resurfaces, the emptiness expands. New people may admire them, desire them, or validate them, but none of that recreates the experience of being mirrored at a soul level. This is why the loss lingers. The narcissist isn't grieving the person as an equal partner. They are destabilized by the loss of the reflection that helped them feel human in moments when they otherwise felt fragmented, hollow, and unseen even by themselves. Betrayal doesn't destroy the relationship for a narcissist. It destroys the illusion of control they were living inside. What matters most to a narcissist is not intimacy, trust, or mutuality, but the belief that they are in charge of the emotional narrative. They need to feel one step ahead, desired without being accountable, powerful without being exposed. Control is their psychological oxygen. As long as they believe they are managing perceptions, reactions, and outcomes, they feel safe inside themselves. When a narcissist betrays, they assume the usual script will play out. They expect confusion, pursuit, bargaining, emotional chaos, all of which reinforces their sense of dominance. With a super empath, however, betrayal often triggers something unexpected: clarity. The empath may feel shattered, but they also see. They recognize the pattern, the intention, the lack of remorse beneath the performance. This is where the illusion collapses. The narcissist realizes they are no longer directing the emotional field. The empath's response becomes unpredictable, not reactive, not pleading, not dramatic, but discerning. That loss of narrative control is destabilizing. The narcissist can tolerate anger more than detachment. Anger keeps them central. Detachment removes them from the story entirely. When the empath steps back, stops over-explaining, or quietly disengages, the narcissist experiences a psychological free fall. Their tactics don't land. Their charm feels ineffective. Their rewriting of events doesn't stick. For the first time, they are not controlling how they are being perceived. This is why they spiral internally, even if they appear unbothered. They replay conversations, they test the door, they oscillate between grandiosity and collapse. Betrayal was supposed to reaffirm their power, but instead it exposed its limits. They learn on some level that control only worked because someone else was willing to absorb the cost. What breaks them isn't losing the relationship. It's realizing their influence was conditional, fragile, and dependent on someone else's empathy. Once that realization sets in, the narcissist can never fully return to the fantasy of absolute control that once held their inner world together. The narcissist confuses empathy with weakness because they experience the world through dominance, not connection. To them, strength means emotional invulnerability, control, and leverage. When they encounter a super empath, they misinterpret compassion as tolerance, patience as permission, forgiveness as entitlement. The empath's ability to stay present during emotional storms feels, to the narcissist, like proof that consequences don't apply. They assume the empath will always understand, always adjust, always stay. This misunderstanding becomes the foundation of the betrayal. What the narcissist fails to grasp is that empathy is not submission, it is perception. A super empath is constantly reading between the lines, registering inconsistencies, tracking patterns over time. While the narcissist believes they are getting away with things, the empath is gathering clarity. Empathy delays reaction, not awareness. The narcissist mistakes silence for ignorance and calm for incapacity, reinforcing the belief that the empath can be crossed without cost. This is why betrayal feels safe to the narcissist in the moment. They believe the empath will rationalize it, internalize it, or self-blame. And often, initially, the empath does try to understand. They look for context, stress, wounds, explanations. But empathy has a limit. When betrayal exposes intent rather than error, something shifts. The empath stops trying to feel with the narcissist and starts seeing through them. That moment is catastrophic for the narcissist because the empath's empathy was never weakness. It was restraint. Once it's withdrawn, the narcissist is no longer buffered from reality. The warmth disappears. The emotional cushioning is gone. Their words land flat. Their charm doesn't soothe. Their justifications don't soften the truth. What remains is the naked impact of their behavior, unfiltered and unabsorbed. The narcissist then experiences a shock they weren't prepared for. The person they believed was easiest to exploit becomes the one they cannot manipulate anymore. The empath's withdrawal is not dramatic, but it is absolute. There is no rage to feed off. No emotional chaos to redirect, no over-explaining to distort. The narcissist realizes too late that what they called weakness was actually the only thing standing between them and the full weight of their own actions. And once that empathy is gone, it does not return in the same form again. A super empath regulates the narcissist's inner chaos quietly, invisibly, and without ever being credited for it. The narcissist's internal world is fragmented, swings between grandiosity and shame, certainty and emptiness, superiority and terror of exposure. They cannot self-soothe in a stable way. What the super empath does, often unconsciously, is absorb that turbulence and return it in a calmer, more coherent form. They listen without flinching, normalize emotions without excusing harm, and provide a steady emotional rhythm that the narcissist lacks internally. This regulation doesn't look dramatic. It shows up as late-night conversations that leave the narcissist calmer, conflicts that dissolve without accountability, emotional outbursts that somehow don't explode the relationship. The empath anticipates moods, softens edges, and adapts their tone to prevent escalation. Over time, the narcissist begins to feel more together around the empath, more functional, more confident, more grounded. They attribute this stability to themselves, never realizing it is being externally supplied. Because the regulation is invisible, the narcissist doesn't respect it. They don't see it as labor, skill, or strength. They experience it as atmosphere, something that simply exists for them. This is why they feel entitled to it. The empath becomes a psychological environment rather than a person, a place where the narcissist can discharge anxiety, rage, insecurity, and confusion without consequence. The empath's presence holds the narcissist together during moments that would otherwise spiral. When betrayal happens and the empath withdraws, the loss is not just relational, it is neurological and emotional. The narcissist's inner chaos, once diffused through another human being, rebounds inward. Emotional regulation collapses. They feel more irritable, more restless, more dysregulated than before. Sleep changes. Focus deteriorates. Their usual coping strategies feel ineffective. They may seek stimulation, admiration, or conflict to recreate the lost regulation, but nothing quite stabilizes them the same way. This is why they often seem to unravel privately while presenting confidence publicly. Without the empath's quiet calibration, their internal state becomes louder and harder to manage. They don't miss the kindness in the way others assume. They miss the calm they didn't know they were borrowing. And because they never acknowledge the empath's role in holding their emotional system together, they don't understand why they feel increasingly unsettled, scattered, and internally noisy long after the betrayal, even when life on the surface appears to be moving forward. After betrayal, the narcissist loses their emotional stabilizer, and this loss hits at a level they don't consciously understand but constantly feel. The stabilizer was not affection or loyalty in the traditional sense. It was the empath's ability to absorb emotional volatility without retaliating or collapsing. The super empath functioned like a shock absorber, taking in anxiety, rage, insecurity, boredom, and shame, and returning calm, reassurance, or emotional continuity. With that stabilizer in place, the narcissist could live with themselves more easily. Once betrayal fractures the bond, that stabilizing force disappears abruptly. The narcissist may initially feel relief or superiority, believing they have escaped limits or accountability. But soon, their emotional system starts misfiring. Small frustrations feel overwhelming. Minor slights trigger disproportionate reactions. The internal swings become faster and more intense. What used to be regulated through connection now has nowhere to go. They feel agitated without knowing why, restless without a clear cause, dissatisfied even when things appear to be going their way. This is why narcissists often escalate behaviors after betrayal. They provoke, triangulate, seek admiration compulsively, or create chaos. These are not signs of confidence. They are attempts to recreate the emotional regulation they lost. Attention becomes a substitute. Drama becomes stimulation. Control becomes a way to quiet internal noise. But none of it stabilizes them for long. Without the empath's grounding presence, every emotional high crashes harder. Every validation wears off faster. What makes this loss especially destabilizing is that the narcissist never acknowledged the stabilizer while it existed. They believed the calm they felt was self-generated. When it vanishes, they experience confusion rather than insight. They assume